Don't let their words decide who you are.
She adopted a dying homeless boy. Years later, he came back as a billionaire. This is not just a story about riches or poverty. It's about love, sacrifice, and how one small act of kindness can change the world. Amelia was an ordinary woman who opened her heart to a forgotten child. She had nothing, but she gave everything. Years later, that same boy came back not as the helpless child she once knew, but as one of the richest men alive. But fate had a twist waiting, because the woman who had once saved him now desperately needed saving herself. Before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, because stories like this will touch your heart and change the way you see the world. The rain poured mercilessly that night, drenching the streets with a cold, biting wind. Most people hurried past with umbrellas, eager to reach the warmth of their homes. But on the corner of a dimly lit alley, a young boy lay curled up against a wall, his frail body shivering uncontrollably. His clothes were torn, his face pale, and his eyes half closed, as if he were slipping away from life itself. He looked no older than 10. Everyone who passed by glanced at him for a moment, then turned away. Some shook their heads, others whispered about how hopeless children like him were. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. Until she saw him. Amelia Turner was returning from her late shift at the diner, her hands red from hours of washing dishes and her hair damp from the rain. She wasn't rich, far from it. Life had been one long struggle ever since her husband had left, and she'd been forced to raise herself alone. But beneath all the hardships, Amelia carried something rare, a heart that still cared. As she spotted the boy on the ground, she froze. For a second, she thought he was already gone. Then she saw his chest rise faintly, a weak attempt to breathe. "Oh my God," Amelia whispered, kneeling beside him. Hey, can you hear me?" The boy's lips trembled, but no words came out. His eyes barely flickered open. Without hesitation, Amelia took off her own coat and wrapped it around his tiny frame. The rain soaked her shirt instantly, but she didn't care. She lifted him gently, though he was so light it broke her heart. "Don't worry," she murmured softly. "You're safe now. I've got you." It is their really prevested Preveri axes. And how lasted may college too that made rusted to the rusted braid. People on the street stared. Some even muttered, "Why bother? He won't last the night. She's wasting her time." But Amelia ignored them. She carried the boy through the rain, all the way to her small apartment. Inside, her home was nothing grand, just 2 cramped rooms, peeling wallpaper, and an old heater that barely worked. But it was warmer than the streets. Amelia laid the boy on her bed, hurried to boil water, and found the last packet of soup she had left. As she gently fed him a spoonful, his eyes opened wider for the first time. They were a stormy shade of gray, filled with pain but also something else, hope. "Do you have a name?" Amelia asked softly. The boy's lips moved weakly. Ethan." Amelia smiled faintly. "Ethan, that's a strong name. Well, Ethan, from now on, you don't have to fight alone." The boy blinked at her, tears forming in the corners of his eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, someone cared whether he lived or died. That night, as the rain continued to hammer the city outside, Ethan fell asleep wrapped in Amelia's blanket, while Amelia sat beside him, watching over him like a guardian. She had no idea how she would afford food for both of them tomorrow. She had no idea how she'd explain to her landlord. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had saved a life. And sometimes, saving one life can change everything. The morning sunlight filtered weakly through Amelia's thin curtains, casting golden streaks across the small room. Ethan stirred in the bed, his frail arms clutching the blanket as if afraid someone would take it away. For a moment, he thought it had all been a dream, that the warmth, the soup, the gentle voice were only tricks of his imagination. But when he opened his eyes, there she was. Amelia sat at the small wooden table by the window, sipping tea from a chipped mug. She looked tired, her eyes carried dark circles, and her apron was still damp from last night's rain. But the moment she noticed Ethan awake, her face lit up with a smile that melted the fear inside him. "Good morning, Ethan," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" Ethan hesitated, his throat dry. He wanted to say he was fine, but his voice cracked into a whisper. "Better, I think." Amelia nodded. "That's good. You'll be even better after breakfast." She placed a small bowl of oatmeal in front of him. It wasn't much, just what she could afford after stretching her meager supplies, but to Ethan, it was a feast. His trembling hands reached for the spoon, but he froze midway. A shadow passed across his face. I don't have money," he murmured, ashamed. "I can't pay you back." Amelia's heart ached. She leaned forward, gently pushing the bowl closer. "You don't owe me anything, Ethan. Just eat. That's all I ask." For the first time in years, Ethan ate a meal without worrying where the next one would come from. Tears silently rolled down his cheeks as he swallowed each spoonful. Over the next few weeks, Amelia's life changed. She worked long shifts at the diner, often coming home exhausted, but she always found the energy to care for Ethan. She took him to the clinic, bought medicine with the little savings she had, and slowly watched as his health improved. His cheeks filled out, his voice grew stronger, and his eyes regained a spark that had been buried under years of neglect. One evening, while Amelia was sewing up a tear in his shirt, Ethan asked quietly, "Why are you doing this for me?" Amelia paused, needle in hand. "Because someone has to. The world turned its back on you, Ethan." "I won't." Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then, shyly, he whispered the word that changed everything. "Mom." Amelia's hands shook. She hadn't been called that in years, not since losing her own baby long ago. Her eyes welled up, but she quickly brushed the tears away and smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. Mom will always be here." School was the next challenge. Ethan had never been inside a classroom before. He didn't even know how to hold a pencil properly. The first day, kids laughed at him, mocking his ragged clothes and messy handwriting. Ethan wanted to run away, but Amelia knelt down in front of him outside the school gates and said firmly, "Don't let their words decide who you are. You are smart, Ethan, smarter than you know, and one day they'll wish they were you." Her words stuck in his heart like fire. From then on, Ethan studied harder than anyone else. He borrowed old books, spent nights under the flickering light of Amelia's lamp, and solved problems until his fingers cramped. Slowly, teachers began to notice his brilliance. He wasn't just hardworking, he was gifted. But Amelia's sacrifices grew heavier. Bills piled up. Some nights, she skipped meals so Ethan could eat. She wore the same old shoes, even when they tore at the soles. Yet, she never complained. One winter night, Ethan found her sitting at the table, staring at overdue notices. Her hands trembled, and she looked older than her years. Quietly, he walked over and hugged her. "I'll make it up to you someday, Mom," he said, his voice steady. "I promise. I'll make you proud." Amelia hugged him back tightly, her tears falling silently onto his hair. "You already have, Ethan. You already have." That night, as Amelia finally drifted to sleep, Ethan sat by the window, looking at the stars. For the first time in his life, he allowed himself to dream. He didn't know how or when, but deep inside, he knew one thing: he would rise. And when he did, it would be because of her. The years rolled by quickly, and with them came the changes no one had imagined. Ethan, once the weak and dying boy Amelia had carried in her arms, was now a tall, confident young man. His eyes, once dulled by hunger and fear, now glowed with determination. He had become one of the top students in the city, winning awards, scholarships, and the admiration of his teachers. Amelia watched every step of his growth with quiet pride. Each medal pinned on his chest, each certificate tucked into a folder, felt like a reward for all the nights she had gone hungry, all the hours she had worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. But with success came a price. One afternoon, as Amelia sat folding laundry in their tiny apartment, Ethan walked in holding a letter, his hands trembling with excitement. "Mom," he said breathlessly, "I got it." Amelia looked up, confused. "Got what?" He handed her the envelope. Her eyes scanned the bold letters. Full scholarship awarded International Institute of Technology, London. Amelia's breath caught. She read it twice, then a third time, before her vision blurred with tears. You got a scholarship abroad?" she whispered. Ethan nodded eagerly. "Yes, Mom. It's everything we dreamed of. They'll cover my tuition, housing, everything. This is my chance to make something of myself." Amelia smiled through her tears, pride swelling in her chest. But deep inside, her heart twisted painfully. London was a world away. She had held him close all these years, and now the world was calling him away from her. The weeks that followed were a blur of preparations. Amelia sewed his clothes, packed what little belongings he had, and even managed to buy him a second-hand suitcase. She smiled, she encouraged, she laughed at his excitement, yet every night, when Ethan couldn't see, she cried silently into her pillow. The night before his departure, Ethan found her sitting quietly at the window, the same place he had once sat dreaming of a brighter future. He walked over and sat beside her. "Mom," he said softly, "are you sad?" Amelia turned to him, forcing a smile. "Sad? Why would I be sad? My son is going to achieve everything I ever hoped for him. That makes me the happiest mother in the world." But Ethan wasn't fooled. He had learned to read her eyes, and he could see the storm behind them. "I'll come back," he promised firmly. "I'll study hard, I'll succeed, and when I return, I'll give you the life you deserve. No more late nights, no more unpaid bills. I swear it." Amelia reached out and cupped his face in her hands. "Ethan, listen to me. I don't need wealth. I don't need mansions or riches. All I ever wanted was to see you live, to see you happy. That's enough for me." Ethan shook his head. "No, Mom. You gave me life when no one else cared. I can't just repay you with words. I'll come back as someone you can be proud of." The next morning, the bus station was crowded with families saying their goodbyes. Amelia stood with Ethan's suitcase at her side, her arms wrapped tightly around him. "Be strong, Ethan," she whispered. "Never forget who you are, and no matter how far you go, remember that you always have a home here." Ethan clung to her, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I'll come back for you, Mom, I promise." The bus doors closed, and Amelia watched through the glass as Ethan pressed his hand to the window, his eyes locked on hers until the bus pulled away. She stood there long after it had gone, the sound of the engine fading into silence. Alone on the platform, Amelia whispered to herself, "Goodbye, my boy. Be everything I know you can be." Then she turned and walked home, her steps heavy, her heart aching, but her spirit filled with hope. That night, Amelia sat in the quiet of her apartment, staring at the empty bed where Ethan once slept. For the first time in years, the room felt unbearably silent. She folded her hands together and prayed, "God, keep him safe. Let him reach the stars. Even if I never see him again, let him shine brighter than I ever could." And with that prayer, Amelia drifted into sleep, unaware of how the years ahead would test her strength and how the promise Ethan made that day would return to her life in ways she could never imagine. London greeted Ethan with a chill he had never felt before. The city was vast, buzzing with lights and life at every corner. But to a boy who had grown up with nothing, it was overwhelming. He clutched his worn-out suitcase as he stepped into the campus of the International Institute of Technology. Everything was new. The tall glass buildings, the students walking confidently in crisp clothes, the professors with accents he struggled to understand. For the first few weeks, Ethan felt like an outsider. His shoes were old, his accent heavy, and his clothes marked him as different. Some students laughed at him, others ignored him. But every time he felt the urge to give up, he remembered Amelia's tired smile, her sacrifices, and her words echoing in his mind. "You are smarter than you know. One day, they'll wish they were you." So Ethan worked, harder than anyone else. Days turned into nights as he buried himself in books, coding projects, and research. He was often the first to enter the library and the last to leave. While others partied, he studied. While others slept, he dreamed of building something the world had never seen. By his second year, professors began noticing his brilliance. Ethan wasn't just a student, he was a visionary. His ideas about technology, energy, and artificial intelligence were ahead of their time. He created small projects that caught attention. A low-cost app that helped homeless shelters track food donations, a medical program that analyzed symptoms faster than human doctors. Each invention was a tribute to his past, a reflection of his promise to Amelia. Emails of opportunity poured in, companies wanted to hire him, investors wanted to back him. But Ethan had bigger dreams. "I don't want to work for them," he told himself one night, staring out at the glowing city skyline. "I want to create something that changes the world." Years passed. Ethan graduated top of his class, but instead of settling for a corporate job, he launched his own startup. It was small at first, just him and a handful of passionate students working out of a basement office. They had no money, no fancy equipment, only sleepless nights and burning ambition. But Ethan's vision turned out to be unstoppable. His company developed groundbreaking software that revolutionized digital security. Within a year, major corporations were knocking at his door. Within 3 years, his company had expanded globally. Investors poured millions into his ideas, and for the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't struggling to survive, he was thriving. By the time he turned 30, Ethan Bernard was a name the world knew. He was invited to conferences, featured in magazines, and listed among the youngest billionaires of his generation. Luxury cars, private jets, penthouses in the heart of London, everything people dreamed of, he now owned. But in the quiet of the night, when the world wasn't watching, Ethan's heart still longed for one thing. Home, Amelia. He often opened his old email drafts, where he had written letters to her but never sent them. "Mom, I made it. Mom, I bought my first office. Mom, I'm on the cover of Forbes." But each time, he hesitated. He thought, "Not yet. I'll go back when I can give her everything. I'll return when I'm ready to fulfill my promise." So the years stretched longer. Ethan built empires, but his connection to Amelia grew thinner. He imagined her living comfortably, maybe even proudly telling neighbors about her son abroad. He never once considered the truth that while he was surrounded by gold and glass, Amelia's world was slowly crumbling. One evening, after receiving an award for Innovator of the Year, Ethan stood on the grand stage, cameras flashing in his face. The applause thundered around him, but his mind wandered. He remembered a tiny apartment, the warmth of soup on a rainy night, and a woman's voice whispering, "You don't owe me anything, Ethan. Just live." And in that moment, among all the glittering lights, Ethan felt a sharp pang of emptiness. "What good is all this?" he thought, "if she isn't here to see it?" He realized then that no amount of success could erase the debt of love he owed Amelia. It was time. The boy who once had nothing was now a billionaire, and he was finally going home. The private jet descended slowly, its polished wings gleaming against the morning sunday. Ethan sat by the window, dressed in a tailored suit that cost more than his mother had earned in a year. The world now called him Ethan Bernard, a billionaire, a visionary, a man who had conquered industries. Yet in his heart, he was still the boy who had once clung to a woman's coat in the pouring rain. "Home," he whispered, as the wheels touched the ground. "I'm finally home." A convoy of luxury cars waited outside the airport. Cameras clicked, reporters shouted questions, and bodyguards flanked him as he walked. But Ethan ignored them. His mind wasn't on the spotlight, the press, or the flashing lights. His mind was on her. The drive to his old neighborhood was long, and with every passing street, his heart pounded harder. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times. Amelia standing at the door, tears of pride in her eyes, neighbors whispering in awe, her life transformed by his success. But when the cars finally pulled up to the old street, reality struck him like a blade. The houses were worn down, paint peeling off, roofs sagging, and there it was, Amelia's home. Or rather, what was left of it. The once modest apartment was now in ruins, its windows cracked, the door barely holding on. The yard was overgrown, and a faded "for sale" sign leaned against the wall. Ethan's chest tightened. This can't be right. He stepped out of the car, ignoring the murmurs of the crowd that had gathered. His expensive shoes crunched against broken gravel as he walked to the door and knocked. For a long moment, there was silence. Then the door creaked open, and there she was. Amelia, but not the Amelia he remembered. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face lined with years of hardship. Her clothes were old and worn, her hands trembling as she clutched the doorframe for support. She looked frail, tired, so different from the woman who had once carried him through the rain with strength and determination. Ethan's throat closed. "Mom," Amelia blinked, her eyes struggling to recognize the man in front of her. For a moment, she saw only the suit, the bodyguards, the car. Then her gaze found his eyes, the same stormy gray eyes she had once saved from death. "Ethan?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Tears blurred his vision. He stepped forward, pulling her into his arms. "It's me, Mom. I came back. I promised I would." Inside the house, Ethan was horrified. The walls were damp, the furniture broken, cupboards nearly empty. Amelia had been living in poverty all this time, while he had been surrounded by riches. Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan demanded, his voice shaking with guilt. "All these years I was building empires, thinking you were safe, thinking you were proud, but you were suffering alone." Amelia smiled faintly, placing a hand on his cheek. "Ethan, I didn't want to burden you. You were chasing your dreams. That was enough for me. I survived because I had faith that you were out there, living the life I could never give you." Her words pierced him deeper than any blade. Ethan fell to his knees before her, his billion-dollar world crumbling in an instant. "I failed you," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "All the money, all the success, it means nothing if you had to live like this." Amelia shook her head gently. "No, Ethan, you didn't fail me. You kept your promise. You became someone extraordinary. I never needed wealth. I only needed to know you were alive, that my sacrifice wasn't in vain." That night, Ethan stayed in the broken home with Amelia, refusing the comfort of his hotels and mansions. He cooked for her, just as she had once cooked for him. He sat by her side, holding her frail hand, remembering every moment she had given him life. But deep inside, a fire was burning. Ethan knew this wasn't the end of their story. He couldn't undo the years of her suffering, but he could change everything from this moment forward. And in his heart, he made a silent vow. Never again would Amelia know the taste of hunger or the pain of poverty. The world had once ignored a dying boy, but now that boy had the power to rewrite the story not just for her, but for countless others. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the cracked window of Amelia's house. For the first time in years, the place felt alive. Ethan stood at the stove, clumsily frying eggs while Amelia sat at the table, watching him with quiet amusement. "You'll burn them if you keep staring at me instead of the pan," she teased softly. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "You deserve breakfast made by your son, Mom. Burnt or not, you're eating it." Amelia's smile faded into something gentler. She had dreamt of this moment for so long, just to see him again, alive, strong, successful. To her, this was enough. But Ethan knew it wasn't. Not anymore. He turned, placing the plate in front of her. "Mom, listen to me. I can't change the years you spent suffering, but I can change everything now. I want to give you the life you should have always had." Amelia shook her head, her eyes soft but firm. "Ethan, I don't need riches. I only needed you to come back." Ethan knelt beside her, taking her hand. "It's not just about money. It's about honor. You saved me when I had nothing. The world abandoned me, but you didn't. If I don't use what I have to repay that love, not just to you, but to others like me, then what was the point of it all?" Over the next few weeks, Ethan's presence in the old town became impossible to ignore. He refused to hide behind his wealth, he walked the streets, met the neighbors, and quietly learned of their struggles. Homeless children begging on corners reminded him of his own past. Widows working themselves to exhaustion reminded him of Amelia. One evening, he gathered Amelia and took her to a piece of land just outside the city. It was vast, with rolling fields and the foundation of a new building already being laid. Amelia frowned, confused. "What is this, Ethan?" Ethan turned to her, his eyes shining with determination. "It's your legacy, Mom. An orphanage, a shelter, a school, all in your name. The Amelia Foundation. No child will ever sleep on the streets again. No mother will ever suffer alone. You saved one life, but through you, thousands will be saved." Amelia's lips trembled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Ethan, this is too much. I never asked for this." Ethan gently wiped her tears. "You didn't have to ask. You gave me everything when I had nothing. Now it's my turn." Months passed and the foundation became a reality. Children filled the halls of the new orphanage, their laughter echoing against the bright walls. Amelia walked among them, her heart swelling with joy as tiny hands reached out to hold hers. One little girl tugged at her sleeve and asked innocently, "Are you really the mother of Mr. Bonnard, the billionaire?" Amelia smiled, bending down to meet the child's eyes. "Yes, I am. But before he was a billionaire, he was just a boy who needed love." And as she said it, her eyes found Ethan standing nearby, watching with pride. On the day of the foundation's grand opening, reporters, investors, and dignitaries gathered. Ethan stood on the stage, dressed not in a flashy suit, but in something simple, humble. The spotlight wasn't on him today, it was on Amelia. He turned to the crowd and said, "The world knows me as Ethan Bonnard, the billionaire. But what the world doesn't know is that I am only alive today because of one woman. She found me when I was nothing, dying and forgotten. She didn't see a beggar, she saw a son, and she gave me life." The audience grew silent, moved by his words. "She is my mother, Amelia Turner. This foundation bears her name because every life we save here will be a reflection of the love she gave me. If I am great, it is only because she chose to care." Amelia, sitting in the front row, covered her face as tears streamed freely. The applause that followed shook the hall, but Amelia's heart heard only one thing: her son's voice, filled with love. That night, after the celebration, Ethan and Amelia walked quietly through the orphanage halls. Children slept peacefully in warm beds, their soft breaths a lullaby of hope. Ethan whispered, "Do you see, Mom? This is only the beginning." Amelia slipped her arm through his, her head resting gently on his shoulder. "You've already given me more than I ever dreamed of, Ethan. I don't need anything else. My heart is full." Ethan smiled, his eyes misty. "Then let's fill the world's heart together." And so, the story came full circle. A dying homeless boy had once been saved by the kindness of a woman who had nothing. Years later, that boy returned as a billionaire, not just to repay her, but to ensure that no one else would ever be left behind. It wasn't just wealth. It wasn't just redemption. It was love eternal, selfless, and unbreakable.